Spartans. The very word sparks images of fearless warriors, sculpted like statues, standing against impossible odds. But how much of what we know about them comes from real history, and how much is pure Hollywood fantasy? You've seen the movies, you've heard the legends, the chiseled abs, the impossible battles, the defiant cries of "This is Sparta." But what if I told you that the real story is even more fascinating, more complex, and in many ways, more brutal than anything you've seen on screen? Today, we're going to peel back the layers of myth and uncover the true story of Sparta. We'll explore their unique society, their legendary battles, and finally, how Hollywood transformed them into larger-than-life, nearly supernatural heroes. So stick around, because by the end of this, you'll see the Spartans in a whole new light. So, who are the real Spartans? Forget the lone wolves and maverick heroes for a moment. Spartan society was built on one thing above all else: the state. From the moment a boy was born, his life belonged to Sparta. If deemed healthy and strong, he was destined for the Agoge, the infamous state-run military education system. At just 7 years old, boys were taken from their families and plunged into a world of relentless training. They learned to endure pain, hunger, and cold. They were taught survival skills, discipline, and above all, absolute obedience. It was a brutal system designed to forge the ultimate soldier, a cog in the unstoppable Spartan war machine. But it wasn't just about fighting. It was about stripping away individuality to create a perfectly unified brotherhood. And what about the women? Spartan women were unlike any others in ancient Greece. While Athenian women were largely confined to the home, Spartan women enjoyed remarkable freedoms. They could own land, they received an education, and they underwent physical training. Why? Because Sparta believed that strong mothers would produce strong sons, the future warriors of the state. They were expected to be fiercely loyal and to instill Spartan values in their children. A famous Spartan saying has a mother telling her son to come back from battle, either with your shield or on it, meaning victorious or dead. There was no room for cowardice. But there's a dark side to this society that Hollywood conveniently ignores. The Spartans were a tiny ruling class, a military elite. Who did all the work? Who farmed the land and provided the resources that allowed the Spartans to train full-time? The Helots. The Helots were a vast population of enslaved people, tied to the land they worked and brutally oppressed by their Spartan masters. The entire Spartan way of life was built on the backs of this enslaved workforce. The Spartans lived in constant fear of a Helot uprising, and this fear shaped every aspect of their culture, from their politics to their military focus. The warrior state existed not just to fight foreign enemies, but to control its own population. This brings us to Spartan warfare. When you think of a Spartan in battle, you might picture a lone hero, like Leonidas, slicing through hordes of enemies. The reality was the complete opposite. A Spartan's strength wasn't in individual skill, but in collective discipline. Their primary formation was the hoplite phalanx. Imagine a wall of men, shoulder to shoulder, each holding a large, round shield called a hoplon. Each man's shield protected not just himself, but the man standing to his left. It was a human tank, a formation that relied on trust, unity, and holding the line at all costs. To break formation was to endanger everyone. This is why the shield was the most important piece of equipment. A soldier could lose his helmet or his spear and still be useful, but to lose your shield was the ultimate disgrace, because you had failed your comrades. Their most famous battle, of course, was Thermopylae in 480 BC, where a small force of Greeks, led by 300 Spartans, held off the massive Persian army. While they ultimately fell, their stand became a legendary symbol of courage against impossible odds. But Thermopylae was just one battle. The Spartans also played a crucial role in the victory at the Battle of Plataea, which ended the Persian invasion. They fought and won the brutal, decades-long Peloponnesian War against their rivals, Athens, establishing themselves as the dominant power in Greece. But in all these conflicts, the key to their success was never flashy, individual fighting. It was teamwork, obedience, and the unwavering discipline instilled by the Agoge. Now let's talk about Hollywood's version. The film 300 is probably the first thing that comes to mind. It gave us hypermuscular warriors fighting with oiled chests and leather briefs, moving with superhuman speed and agility. It's an incredible visual spectacle, but it's not history. Real Spartans were heavily armored. They wore bronze helmets that covered their entire face, bronze chest plates and greaves to protect their shins. They were formidable, but they were human, not demigods. The movie also portrays the Spartans as champions of freedom and reason against a mystical, despotic Persian empire. In reality, Sparta was a rigid, totalitarian society built on slavery, where individuality was suppressed, not celebrated, and that famous scene, the "This is Sparta" kick into the well? Pure cinematic invention. While Spartans were known for their laconic or short and witty speech, there's no historical record of such an event. Hollywood loves to create these memorable, dramatic moments, but they often distort the truth. The film turns the battle into a series of heroic duels, with Leonidas fighting like a superhero. As we've discussed, real Spartan combat was about the phalanx, the shield wall. The idea of a Spartan king breaking formation to fight alone would have been seen as reckless and a betrayal of their entire military doctrine. Hollywood gives us action heroes, history gives us disciplined soldiers. So let's put it side by side, fact versus fiction. Hollywood Spartans are chiseled, individualistic superheroes who fight practically naked. The real Spartans were disciplined, heavily armored soldiers who relied on teamwork and formation. Hollywood's story completely ignores the helots, the enslaved population that made the Spartan lifestyle possible. The real Spartan society was entirely dependent on them. Hollywood focuses almost exclusively on the glorious defeat at Thermopylae, painting the Spartans as invincible in spirit. History shows us they had many victories, but they also had devastating defeats. Their power was eventually broken at the Battle of Leuctra in 371 BC, not by a foreign horde, but by a rival Greek city-state, Thebes, which used innovative tactics to shatter the once unbeatable phalanx. The Spartan myth of invincibility was just that, a myth. Hollywood sells us a simple story of good versus evil, but the reality was a complex web of politics, social structure, and the brutal realities of ancient warfare. So who were the Spartans, really? They weren't the demigods of the silver screen, but they were undoubtedly one of the most unique and influential societies of the ancient world. Hollywood gives us spectacle, a visually stunning fantasy that's thrilling to watch. But history gives us something more profound. The story of a culture completely dedicated to a set of ideals, discipline, unity, and sacrifice. The real Spartans teach us about the power of collective effort, the dark side of a society built on oppression, and the way that legends can grow to overshadow a more complicated truth. The movie version might be more exciting, but the real story of a people who built a legacy that has endured for over 2 millennia? In its own way, that's even more heroic. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey into ancient history. If you enjoyed uncovering the truth behind the myths, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the past. Let me know in the comments what you find more fascinating, the Hollywood legend or the historical reality. See you next time.